All right, we are here with Tyler Demona and appreciate your time very much. And
Yeah.
as always, we kind of kick off the interviews. Can you take us back and tell us kind of who you were prior to joining the military? Give us a sense of who you were and then lead us into your journey.
Yeah. Well, it's far from glamorous. I was definitely a troubled young man, just tr a troublemaker. I mean, I had a great childhood, but I just was never good at school. I never could follow directions. I was a shoe-in for military correctional training, I think, um, from an early age. But it took me until 2023, I think, is when I joined. And I came in as a private first class. I had a little bit of college. And after I started failing and wasting all my money and getting into debt in college, I was like, I gotta get out. I gotta get out of this town and do something different. So I actually looked at all the branches, and the Navy was going to take 6 months. And I thought, if I stay here any longer, I'm going to get some kind of criminal record, and I won't be able to join. So the Marines seemed a little too hardcore for my personal uh, taste, but the Army seemed just right. And when I went in there, it was like they're like, we can have you out of here in 2 weeks if you can pass the drug test, which obviously pushed it out to about a month because I used to, you know, use marijuana as a kid. I was an idiot, but so I joined. I went to basic at God, where it was in Columbia. I think it was Fort Jackson, and I picked a really kind of I picked an MOS that would allow me to avert any combat, any like I didn't want anything to do with the esprit de corps army. I was like, how can I just get in, get some debt paid off, maybe get some skills? Like seriously, it wasn't very patriotic. It was just I'm just trying to get out of my hometown and not go to jail and ruin my life. And so, anyways, I my first duty assignment was and I should tell you my original MOS was 15 Foxtrot, which is like a helicopter electrician.
Cool.
Yeah, I thought I would use that in the private sector later, but turns out I didn't use any of that. But cool training, learned some stuff, got around helicopters, went to South Korea as my first duty station. And that's when I just started noticing I'm a little different from some of the other guys. They were happy being broke every 2 weeks. And I mean, no offense to enlisted dudes, but they just tend to a lot of them, they get paid and then they're broke in 2 weeks and they're always getting in trouble. And I just pretty much went to work, played sports, worked out, and saved all my money. And there's some soldiers that do that. Don't get me wrong, but I just didn't like not knowing anything. And I felt like a lot of times as an enlisted guy, you're really a mushroom in the dark being fed shit. And that is, tell me I'm wrong, it,
Um,
and you don't necessarily need to know everything. But for me, I thought I had a leadership capability. And I think when I really started to notice it was I organized a soccer team while I was in South Korea, and I recruited lieutenants and warrant officers and um, sergeant first classes, and they all let me lead the soccer team. They just fell in line, and I realized, when I'm good at something, people will follow me. So I put in a green to gold packet shortly after that, and went back to my old college. And I think I ended up spending about 2.5 years in college. I got a history degree. I love history, but I haven't used that in any way. It was just a prereq to become an officer. Um, so I remember when you have to pick your branch, we went out to, oddly enough, Fort Lewis is where they did all this officer training. So we went out there. This is like ROTC cadet training, not officers yet. But so we're out there and they got all these tents set up for all the branches. And never once did I want to go in the infantry one. That was just like, man, I highly respect infantry. It's another level of grit. But I wanted more grit. I wanted esprit de corps. After my time in South Korea, there just was the Army's, it's a great organization, but they just didn't have the camaraderie just wasn't there in the aviation. It just wasn't. They were like employees, man. They were. And I mean, I wouldn't say that if a Black Hawk was like picking me up and taking me off the battlefield. I'd be grateful they were there. But it's just um, there's just less esprit de corps. So I went in this one tent and there was a brigadier general in there that was an engineer, and he sold me on the engineers. He was like, it's a perfect mix of like the field and the technical skills. And I was like, that sounds cool. So I picked that. Actually, I had to give 3 years of additional service time just to get my pick for that. And then I gave 3 more years to get engineer. And I think I gave another 3 for some, I can't remember what it was. It was duty station, branch, and something else. But so I had a pretty big commitment in front of me. So I was like, well, I mean, I don't have a whole lot else going on, so let's just lean into this. So I get over to so now I'm a second lieutenant. I go through I think they don't have this course anymore, but it's basic officer leadership training course. I think it's BOLIC, I think is what they call it. And it was actually pretty hard. When we went to the field, we had some Army Ranger captain that just happened to be running our particular lane. And so we had him for a number of weeks, and he was airborne, Ranger, and Pathfinder. And he didn't look intimidating. He was just like a kind of a normal looking guy, but man, his I guess he believed he needed to crush all of us. So he was just working us to the bone. I remember like that was one of the most tiring training exercises of my entire Army experience. Now it doesn't hold a candle to Afghanistan, but it definitely was, it was kind of like I'm finally starting to get that pre-combat, like combat what's the word I'm looking for here? Like when you get in a combat unit, things just get a little harder. The training gets a little more intense. The mass casualty stuff, it gets serious. So it was building up even at BOLIC. Then it cooled off a little. You go to BOLIC 2 and you just learn about engineer stuff. And that's great. And I finally get to, this is 2003 all the way to 2006 was my enlisted time. 2006 to 2008 was college ROTC, and then 2009, I think I don't know exactly when. I think I got to Fort Lewis as a second lieutenant in 2010. And that's when I got to this 22nd. And I reported like right away. And it's normally you got to wait and like spend a bunch of time at battalion. And I was really not wanting to do that. So it was cool. Almost right away, they rotated me in as I think it was second platoon was the first platoon I went to. I didn't think you were in it.
I was in second originally. Yep.
The original second, yeah. And I got there, and then you guys had a great platoon leader, Crone, I believe. I don't remember his first name, but
yes, I have not heard that name since in many years. Yes, I remember him. Yes,
Lieutenant Crone was very he seemed to be pretty well liked, so I knew like, okay, I got to come in, and he was very competent too. So, it kind of left some shoes to fill. So, anyway, so I get there, and right away I'm, you're just kind of like lost as a new lieutenant. No matter how much training you get, I mean, maybe accident or return might have a different opinion, but I just felt like I'm just here, man. I'm gonna make friends as fast as possible, try to learn, be a sponge, have the smallest ego I can, because I mean there were people like Sergeant Bernal, I think his name was.
Yep.
Sergeant First Class Palayo. They had all this combat experience from Iraq. So we had some vets that were in second platoon, and that's an honorable thing to be around people like that and not know anything but be in charge. It's like it's difficult. It really is. You have to kind of be in charge without stepping on anybody's toes who has experience. And if you're not listening to those guys, it won't take long before things break down, because they're just not going to they're not going to respect you. I almost think in the beginning, no lieutenant knows what to do. I don't care how smart they are. So you just gotta kind of massage this concept of not knowing anything but being in charge. It's very strange, but that's how the Army does it. So yeah, so here I am, second lieutenant. I don't know anything. We've got this new platoon. We've got the 22nd has just been stood up after like 80 years of being dormant, and the new commander and first sergeant are good dudes, but they know they're not taking the company to combat. So I'm not sure like how that impacted them. It just kind of, I remember one day I saw Captain Burnett, who was a very funny guy, funny like cartoon character, funny, and he was he was walking to battalion with a 2 liter at his hip, and I just thought, I don't know, think about that. I mean, it's a 2 liter, and you're walking around with this. It's like, anyways. So I don't remember when Dan Lau came, but it was like Dan Lau and First Sergeant Gordius were like, obviously they knew they were going to take this. I believe they knew we're taking this company into battle in Afghanistan. So they came in with a whole different posture. And I thought, they were, I don't know the inner workings. I don't really know their relationship that well, but they seemed like a dynamic duo. Like, and I remember how everybody was like, man, they loved all this CrossFit PT we were doing, at least in the beginning. And that was all Dan Lau. And he was a good dude. I mean, he really was a commander. I thought he was a commander, he was in charge. He didn't do any leadership by committee stuff. Him and the first sergeant had a tight relationship. And you got to be, I mean, if you're getting a first sergeant like First Sergeant Gordius, he could be an officer. You know what I mean? He has the eloquence, the intelligence. He could be the captain. But I mean, he could. I don't think Dan Lau could be the first sergeant though. So you get like, he had kind of a souped up first sergeant, if we're just being honest. At least that's how I saw it. But I thought they were a great command team. It was new blood, new life being injected into the company. Um, the PT standards went up. We started doing all these like competitive platoon runs and stuff down to the water. It was awesome. I mean, it was, there's more pressure because they weren't just going to let you stay who you were. They were going to mold you, pressure you, get the best out of you, which, I mean, they did. I think, and we can get into all the training exercises, but I don't know. I don't know at what point the whole battalion started reorganizing to prepare for this exodus to Afghanistan, and they started. I think we need to make 4 platoons, or we need to downsize to 3. Was it? We need to beef up 3, and we had 4, so we're going to get rid of 1, and we're gonna make 3 like complete packages. So they were going to get rid of a platoon sergeant and an LT, I think. And so there was some talk, because when I first got there, I didn't have a great relationship with my platoon sergeant. I don't want to say anything bad about Sergeant Neely because he served his country, and he deployed to Iraq and is probably a great guy now. But we didn't see eye to eye, and he really wasn't interested in like coaching me in any way. That's just the facts. So it wasn't a healthy relationship, and the platoon wasn't really performing. So I think we were being targeted as the one to shatter. So I remember like he got removed, and then they brought in a great guy, Sergeant First Class Althoff, I think his name was. And it started off good. The relationship started off good, but it then quickly deteriorated. And now there started to be questions like, who is it? Is it Lieutenant Damone? Is he the problem? Or is it these platoon sergeants? And I don't think they knew, but I had some backup because the troops knew. The troops knew. And Sergeant Juan knew. And if he watches this, I do appreciate you standing up for me if you're watching this, because he went to bat with me with Captain Lau, because I think he had seen some things in the field that were telling. And he was just once he told Captain Lau that, Captain Lau told the first sergeant. Gordius calls me in his office and he basically asked me, do you want to be here? Do you want to go? Do you want to go with us where we're going? Like, is your heart and soul here? And the answer I gave him convinced him. He was like, that's all I needed to hear. I remember him saying that. So they moved Neely, sent him to, I think, the personal security detachment for the battalion commander, and kept me and gave me Sergeant Simcoe, who was a great sergeant first class. He was like the way you expect one to be, where yes, he's, commanding the respect of the soldiers, but he's assisting me and getting the mission done. He's not belittling me. He's a support. He's part of the support of the leadership structure. I mean, he did it. He did it right. I thought he was a great platoon sergeant, especially after the first two. So, so then yeah. So we got. I got selected to not leave, which was great because I didn't want to. At no point was I like, let me get out of this deployment. There's no fucking way that I was going to do that or allow that to happen. It just wasn't going to happen. So anyways, then we start going into this intense training because we got all these platoons formed. Now we got to build these leadership teams. And, we started going to Yakima. We did local training. And then we had, actually, we might have already done the, God, I get the timeline a little backwards here, but I just remember some really great training events in Yakima in particular. Actually, this is before First Sergeant Gordius got there. Before, because he led the sticks lane. Let me back up just a little. So we went to Yakima, and they had all these mass casualty lanes and just IED strike, ambush lanes, different types of scenarios, right, to train us with. Well, we were super tired, and I think it was like after midnight. Everybody's tired. And we got one more sticks lane, and it's this super long one where you're navigating on a, old Blue Force tracker and maps, and it's a really long sticks lane. And these roads are like at night, it's so hard to tell where you're going in Yakima. It's so hard. So we're kind of like not sure where we're going. Are we turning here? We're tired. We're not even paying attention anymore to like, what's out there. And then all of a sudden the sticks lane kicks off, and it was this massive ambush orchestrated by First Sergeant Gordius and designed for you to totally fail. Like there's no possible way to win. It's just, we're going to overwhelm all your decision-making faculties. And I remember being like unable to even make a decision. I was like completely stupefied by this lane. And the battalion commander was watching. The command sergeant major was there, and it's like there are people on the radio like, hey, we need to do this and we need to do that. Like everybody's got an opinion, right? And I'm just sitting there like overloaded. So that was a total failure. But to be honest, I needed that. I needed to be froze up like that, because every time you get froze up like that, as long as you're willing to go back in, you're a little bit better next time. And that's what the purpose of the training is to kind of incrementally grow you. And the only thing I wish is like, I wish the Army would have been better about afterwards, not completely like shaming like a disorganized, fucked up experience. They should have been like, okay, let's really get down and talk about where things, but you can't do that because it's like, God, we're getting ready to go to Afghanistan and this platoon looks like shit. It's like, yes, and by the end of this, we're gonna look great, but there's just kind of, you know what I mean? It can be corporate in a way. And that part of it I didn't like. But First Sergeant Gordius designed a sticks lane meant to build leaders. And I thought it was no longer difficult after that one to go through these sticks lanes. I went through Captain Lau's wife's sticks lane after that, and it was a joke compared to his. Like, she had set it up to have different elements of surprise and stuff, but after that overwhelm, I was like, it can't be that bad. So just make a decision. That's basically what I learned from that. Just start moving, and then everything will clear up. And that's pretty much how it actually works. But yeah, so I learned a lot from Yakima, man. I mean, the Army does good training. And I've told people this many times, and like, just private conversations. Like we went through a lot of really good training, even though it sucked at the time and I didn't want to be there. And well, I wanted to be there, but I guess you'd always rather be at home.
Mhm.
But you're forming these great bonds with your troops and your subordinate leaders and up above as well and your peers. And it just was the Army knows how to train people. I'll just leave it at that. And there's certain memories from what's that what's that training center in California?
Oh, the NTC, National Training Center?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've got certain like when I smell diesel, I think of that place, and it's almost like I go back there. It's weird. I don't even know how I got in my head, but uh, it's kind of beautiful in its own way. Kind of cold in the mornings, but then it heat up. Uh, but yeah, I learned a ton, man, in that training, and it did its job, the best it could. Because like we said before we got on this call, there is no way to prepare for Afghanistan. There's just no way.
Right.
Absolutely no way. So, anyways, yeah, I guess from there to the deployment was an interesting experience. I mean, I was determined. I didn't want to go there with a girlfriend or anything like that. That was one thing. I'm just going single. I don't want that distraction, you know. So I just kind of isolated myself before we left. I didn't want any relationships. And then, when we're leaving, I remember getting on the bus, seeing everybody say goodbye to their loved ones. It was kind of a surreal thing. You're like, we're getting on this bus, we're getting ready to go to some crazy ass place in the middle of nowhere. Um, and I left this out, but the guys that were there came back. You remember that?
What do you
They
mean the guys that were there came back?
yeah, I'm sorry, I wasn't clear. The guys that we were replacing sent an ad bomb party back to kind of brief us on what they were going through.
I don't remember that. That's interesting.
They came back, but they didn't, because I remember me and Axton would go to I can't remember where it was on base, but you could basically go and access a bunch of classified documents and you could start reading all kinds of reports and things from the battle space over there. And I remember them showing us recoilless rifle SIG-AX, and it made no sense. It made no sense to me at the time. Like, okay, all right, so recoilless rifle. I don't know why it didn't make sense, but for some reason it didn't scare me. I was just ready to go. I like, oh, they have recoilless rifles. Now we haven't trained for that at all. Like that never once crossed my mind. It was like we just do IED, and search it, detect IED detection, neutralizing the IED, and then react to combat. But we never really had any recoilless simulation, which is a whole nother animal, another element of an ambush, I will say. But yeah, they came back, and I remember them. I don't recall it being rich in information. I just don't. And I don't mean to pick on them. I don't know. They were a National Guard unit, right? I believe so. I'm almost
I
certain.
think the ones replaced and the ones that replaced us were both guard. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I think they were both from the same state. It was Michigan.
I don't remember
But
that.
yeah, one was lower and one was upper, and the upper guys were like all farmers, and it was totally different. But yeah, I just don't remember. I'm not saying they didn't give a bunch of great information. I just didn't personally come away feeling like, oh, I understand this AO. But
Sure.
yeah. So, anyways, there were sergeants talking about calling in fire missions and stuff like that. I thought that was kind of cool. That's about all I remember from it. But so, anyways, we're getting on the bus, and it's kind of surreal. I don't know if you remember how you felt, but it was just I've never done this before, and it feels like a movie in a weird way. It was like we're on this waving goodbye to our loved ones. It felt like we were soldiers. There's a lot of those scenes from that movie, but yeah, and then the whole trip there is just an exhausting uncertain event. Um, I do remember getting when we got to Manas, which I believe is in Kyrgyzstan.
Hmm.
I was like, man, their DFAC is awesome here. I just remember their DFAC had everything. I was like, they didn't have this in the States, but it's kind of cool. I had a couple days to go out and kind of look around. They had those weird condors on their arms. It was a strange culture there. But when you fly into Afghanistan, now it starts to like it really starts sinking in. You know, you're in the back of the C-130 or the Globemaster, whichever plane it was, and you know you're all buttoned up in these seats. You're looking across, and it was when they let us go in the. Did you go in the glass cockpit?
No, I don't.
You didn't go up there?
No,
Oh, it was awesome, dude.
I
They were
bet.
like, hey, anybody who wants to go up in the glass cockpit and see what the pilots are seeing, you can go up there. I went up there and it was like, it was, you know, it was just glass. You're like floating above thousands of feet below. Afghanistan was like solid brown mountains with nothing there. And I'm like, this is just crazy that, you know, I don't know where we're going, but, you know, we landed in Kandahar airfield. And I remember when we got off, the airport had battle damage to it. I just thought that's exactly what I expect. You know what I mean? It was like, all right, there's some battle. I don't know why I thought it was cool. I'm like, that's probably from the when the Rangers stormed this place in 2003 or whatever. But we get in we get in our billets and then there's all this pre-training and it still doesn't feel 100% real yet. These Kandahar airfields like this massive base. So you're just kind of okay, I can see, you know, sun-baked mountains and we're here. It doesn't quite feel real. And this is a sidebar, but I remember somehow I got my hands on a book by Ron Paul, which was a very formative.
Remember you talking about him?
Yeah, it was a very formative time for me. I actually have that changed my life. That book, I remember reading it on the bunk. Just I tore through that book. It was called Liberty Defined. Great book. Anyways, so I think we're getting ready to leave. It's the day we're leaving to go to Fab Assad. And I know you remember this. We're marshaling to get ready to get on these birds. And all of a sudden a rocket attack comes in. And everybody hits the deck. And this thing cuts through the air right over us. You could hear it cutting through the air. And that's how close the rocket was. Cutting through the air, and then it blows up close enough to where you can feel the ground rumble. And you're just like, fuck. Nothing could have landed in the middle of us. I mean, it really could have. It was
Sure.
that close.
Sure.
And I thought, yeah, I guess, you know, that was like welcome to Afghanistan. That really was the welcome to Afghanistan for me. Like a rocket literally, that would have been a money shot for them. I mean, just money shot for them. I don't know how, if I think they just put it on timers and then run off. But if anybody was aiming, they deserved almost a badge of honor. But so we get in the helicopters, we head to Fab Assad, and it's like this. Actually, looking back, it's a pretty beautiful area. It's
Mhm.
like this gorgeous oasis in the middle of these sun-baked mountains. I mean, you look you look at the Registan Desert, and it's like this Red Sea, and then you look north, and it's a different type of desert, totally different. And the mountains just look way more unforgiving in that direction. And there's everything's mud dwellings. There is very little electricity, no plumbing. I mean, it was insane. I don't, these people were living in almost a stone age. It was like Mad Max. They had like moments of technology but then almost everything was like agricultural and mud dwellings and shit like that. So it was interesting just flying in. Um, see, anyways, let me get a little bit of water.
Sure.
So we land and you know, you fall in and some of the I think at that point the National Guard guys were kind of down to just the people that were going to do the right seed ride with us. Or maybe I'm wrong about that. But I remember just being kind of okay, let's inventory all these tricons. Let's do this, you know, duplication of paperwork to get us on track to take over. And there was a couple things I noticed during that period. One, they wanted to be out of there so bad, dude. I mean, there was like a let's go, let's just get this over with and go as fast as we can. We're not going to show you. I mean, I had a sergeant first class actually do my ride seat ride. It was like not even a lieutenant. It was like a sergeant, a staff sergeant who did a great job, but he was. I noticed this reticence from him. We were doing an area clearance for a place that became a strong point that we had a lot of incidents near. But all of a sudden, a mortar came in, and somebody called out some movement, and he said, "Everybody on the road," and he just immediately aborted the mission and left. And I thought, this is not how I would do it. Like I just thought to myself, why we have like 8 gunships here, a bunch of we got all this firepower. We're running from one mortar and a couple guys we think we saw. I just thought this is not.
Mhm.
Again, I don't want to disrespect anybody, but I just thought they're ready to go, dude. I know they had casualties big time, and they had they were there the worst year statistically. So I mean, I don't want to throw any shade. I just think I just thought I'm not going to run things that way personally. I'm not going to run away from these dudes. If we get in a fight, we're going to fight. That's just how it's going to be. Um, I don't believe we ever left somewhere because the Taliban was shooting us.
Mhm.
They can leave. You know what I mean? I'm not. I'm not saying we didn't. Your basic battle drills. If someone is trying to catch you in a kill zone, yes, you drive through it. But I mean, there were certain settings where um, we were there and they showed up to harass us, and he just left. And I just thought, I'm not. No, I can't do that. So there was that, and then just the general want to get out of there, man. They didn't want to be there anymore at all. Um, and this is a kind of a this next one's an interesting criticism of just the army. We laid out all these all the stuff in the tricons. I remember seeing like mountains of gear that nobody's using. And I just think it had built up over the years from all these
Oh,
contractors coming out there. Hey, you, try this new equipment, try this. And it's like, I mean, I remember at one point we were trying some special triangulation equipment that some special forces what do you call the guys in a special forces unit that do the commo? But I don't know what they're called. They have a special name. But
that-
he was formerly one of those guys, and he was in charge of kind of administering this new technology. He'd ride along with us, cool dude. But I'm like, this is just another one of pieces of those junk that's going to end up in the Tricon. Like nothing beats the eyeball, nothing beats aware soldiers. You know what I mean? Like I don't care what technology you give us, with the exception of like thermals and night vision. That is something that does change the game. But actually, that gyro cam changes the game a little too. And by God, if we'd have had the drones of today, man, I would have found a lot more. Think about that.
Sure.
Tell me I'm wrong. But yeah, so uh the night before we go out on our first mission, I remember actually feeling kind of scared of the whole thing. Just oh fuck, like
So
I
I
don't.
just want to just note we're 5 minutes to the first break.
Well, okay. So before I get into my experience in the first 90 days, which is really like, I think we probably should focus on that. I was scared going into the first mission. I just remember laying there at night, feeling a little nervous about it all. And I actually did talk to Sergeant P about it, who gave me some, he never was, and I'll be brief about him here, but he was always very empathetic to reality. Never, I mean, he's a macho dude, but when it came down to it, he always understood, like, it doesn't do me any good to like belittle somebody who is going to be in a leadership position, needs to be bolstered right now. So actually, he was one of my best friends out like of the entire experience. Uh, Knew his family pretty well. But you want to wrap it here for this segment?
Yeah, let's pause here. Good time to pause, and then we'll jump right back in.
Okay, awesome. So first 90 days, we're entering the first 90 days, and like I was saying, I I definitely was. There were all kinds of wake up calls, but like you're getting ready to go on your first real patrol, and it's just kind of like I don't know. I remember Simcoe was pretty gung ho about it. He didn't seem to have any qualms about it, but I was just kind of like, man, what am I ready to make decisions? You know, if things get to that, and I guess of course you don't really know until it happens, but um, yeah, it was a little bit of tension, a little anxiety, but I woke up and there's so much shit to do before you even leave that it just leaves you. I got so much stuff. Um, but the first 90 days was, if I could describe it in one word, it would be chaos because you had a lot of forces working against us being successful in the first 90 days. And a lot of it was just, we don't know the routes. We don't know where to turn around. And our vehicles are huge compared to these roads. There's almost nowhere to turn around a big vehicle like that, especially the Buffalo, which is a massive vehicle. We didn't know where to turn around. We didn't know where the enemy really, we didn't understand the NAIs, which is a named area of interest, where there's enough statistics, enough ambushes and SIGACs where it's an important part of a road. We didn't really understand. We knew they were there, but we didn't get them. Uh, we didn't know what the enemy was capable of.
Hmm.
We really didn't. I don't care like how much you study. We just didn't know. We didn't know what they could do, what they were willing to do. So there's all these variables, and then the terrain with the vehicles. I mean, we broke so many front axles and so many like recovery missions in the first 90 days, which if you don't understand, that adds 8 to 10 hours to your day, possibly. Because sometimes it's less, but oftentimes a recovery mission just adds. I mean, as soon as we like, and this is like, there was always like this competition amongst the drivers. Like, don't be that guy that causes that causes a you know non-enemy forced extension of our already long ass day, because then you're just going to get ragged on forever. And to be truthful, that will never be forgotten. Like you'll always be fucked with for that. And that's just kind of the military culture. But and then there was the enemy, and they were very active. I remember like I want to say a week in, second platoon was on a hardball, one of the only hardball roads, and all of a sudden they just start getting peppered with recoilless rifle fire and small arms, and they just got blasted, didn't even fire back. And when they casevaced Blevins and Rear, I think, down to Fompasab. And I remember that was the first real like SIGAC where, okay, this is. And I remember standing there looking at the Buffalo with Gordius, and I don't know if the tail fin was still in it or not, but you could see where it was hit and all the damage that was done. And I just thought, recoilless rifle. I don't think we had any stick lanes for that. It's like, all right, cool. There's this thing they could shoot at supersonic speeds while we're moving 5 miles an hour. That's
Hmm.
great.
Yep.
Awesome. So not sure how to continue route clearance with that as a factor. But anyways, yeah, so the first 90 days were just, learning the routes, wrong turns. Where do you turn around? What is the enemy capable of? Our bodies aren't acclimated to this. My ass hurt so bad from sitting in those seats I mean, it was like no matter how many cushions you put under your butt, if you sit on it long enough, it's gonna hurt. You're wearing gear, you got this helmet on. It's eventually becomes like, you know, a dumbbell sitting on your head, and your body's just not used to it. And I mean, you can only pound so much caffeine, you're shutting down. And so your body's working against you. The terrain's working against you. You being green and not knowing the terrain, I mean, or the enemy. There's so many factors. So the first 90 days, I mean, between enemy action, um, vehicular accidents, meaning from our drivers, and then, yeah, and then people being removed from theater, I remember there being a shortage of vehicles and us having to like platoon sergeants going around being like, okay, hey, I need to borrow this vehicle. I need to borrow that. I can't, they're trying to put together a route clearance package every day. Like we didn't have enough vehicles. So many of them were like, front end blown up or front axle blown off, or in some cases, completely fucking destroyed, hull breach. That vehicle's gone. That's scrapped forever. Um, and so yeah, we just half our equipment was broke too. I mean, it just these trucks were not meant for little dirt roads. And I remember sitting there watching, and I like the boomerang. I think it was a great tool. But I'm watching like our vehicles go down a road with trees that are obviously the engineers or whatever have not cleared the trees properly. So we're just driving through here and it's just breaking our, I mean, it's just breaking our equipment. I'm watching like, oh, there goes the boomerang. There goes, there's just the terrain made it impossible to, it really evened it out. I think like the Taliban, the best, I think the best numbers they'd put together was probably 4 or 5 guys in one ambush. And it probably didn't exceed that because too many guys getting together in that battlefield with all that persistent what do you call it? ISR. I mean, we were going to see you and destroy you. So they couldn't really gather in big numbers. But 4 or 5 guys could do some damage on the right route, the right time, right circumstances. Uh, so it kind of evened things out. I mean, they had surprise. A lot of our stuff was destroyed, and we were very tired most of the time. And it was just a nightmare, dude. I'd never been that tired. Never in my life been that tired and fatigued, that out of shape. I mean, the idea that you're gonna like, and some soldiers did work out and do that and maintain their bodies, and more power to them. But I didn't feel like you know, that was definitely just for me a big difficulty. I did not maintain my fitness over there. Not until I rotated off the line, then I started getting it back. But it's just too much to do, man. I mean, it's 2.5 hours. That's another thing. We didn't know how to prep our vehicles in the beginning. We didn't understand how to act. Like we were missing hit time so hard. I remember First Sergeant Gordy. It's like this is ridiculous. Like if we don't clear these roads, the infantry can't move.
Mhm.
And now we look like sacks of shit. We're an attachment here to this brigade. It's a famous brigade. It's the tenth Mountain the Chosin Brigade or whatever. All the way back to the Korean War. And they're looking at us. You guys can't even leave the wire on time. Like this is backlogging everything we want to do. And in some cases, they'd get pissed off and just leave. And then they'd hit IED and we looked even worse. And I remember not to throw shade at us, but that was just part of the initial struggles of being organized enough to get out there, know all the systems, get all the checks right, fix stuff that's broken. Cause you turn a truck over, all of a sudden it starts failing. And you're like, oh my, here we go. Like something's broke. Now we got to quickly like swap trucks or try to fix it. We only have a little bit of time. I mean, I do remember Simcoe was like, we're getting up 3 hours early if we have to. And it was just like, oh, you guys can do that. I know that's terrible, but anyways. And here's another thing. The intelligence reports were as good as useless in
Hmm.
the first like 90 days. And nothing against Lieutenant Njoku because he was just doing what they told him to do. But basically they would just hand him this regional intelligence report from the AO. And it basically had overinflated, like nothing detailed, nothing because the people writing it had never probably been under the wire. I mean, they were captains that were intelligence officers that were trained to write a certain way, think a certain way, and they didn't. I'll just say they didn't put a lot of useful intelligence in there. It was just kind of general, and I'd read it and be like, "This is well, we're just gonna go out and see what happens." It's kind of like inevitably what it became. Like, after about a month, you kind of knew most of the routes. You knew most of them. I do remember like one of the longest days I had. We didn't even see combat, but we were what was it? Who was it? We had gone out and somebody rolled a buffalo in an anti-vehicular trench. I don't remember who it was. They rolled it, it was completely upside down. I don't know who it was, but they're upside down in this trench, and we get called as QRF, and we'd already been out all day. And we're like, oh, great, okay. So we go out in the middle of the night, it was pretty early too, so I guess we didn't know the roads at this point very well. So it's dark, we're trying to figure out where to go, and we're in Chosin Zayo.
Mhm.
Remember that strong point where those guys pretended to be teachers and then got inside and attacked everybody? You remember that?
No, I don't.
Yeah, they got up in a guard tower, like firing RPGs down at the soldiers and stuff.
Oh,
That
wow.
actually happened. That happened, bro, at that same strong point. But this was later. So we take a wrong turn, and we're all like, we take a wrong turn. We start going down this road to nowhere. I have no idea where it goes, and I realize we're going the wrong way. I'm like, hey, I'll stop. And this is not the right road, and I'm turning us around. And then the wrecker that's supposed to do the recovery gets caught in barbed wire. And
No.
it's like, oh, I'm like, no. So like, okay, the recovery missions now, you're gonna need recovery. And so we kind of circle up, and I just said half the platoon because it was pretty close. May have been a mistake looking back, but I said half the platoon just go down and give them some security and see what the deal is. I don't want to like be stuck here, half a mile away. But if some IED event would have happened with that half package, I wouldn't have been there to see to it. It would have been a terrible situation. But I got very lucky and nothing happened. And I stayed on site to help the wrecker recover. And we pulled the security perimeter. And I just remember being like seriously worried that the Taliban were gonna realize we were here and come, probe us at night. But that was when after that experience, I realized they actually didn't do a lot at night. I was like, they're not interested in dealing with thermals and night vision goggles. And I don't blame them because we would have murked them. It would have been, it would have been bad. Uh, but you don't know what you don't know. And yeah, that was an exhausting mission, man. God. Uh, there was another one that was real longer than that. I'm not sure I remember the full context. I just remember we camped out at a strong point, and those guys had. I'm glad I wasn't infantry. I'll just say that because they had to use wiggle bags and way less amenities than we had at the Bob. I hate to say that, but and I say amenities with humor. But yeah, first 90 days was really rough, man. And a lot of IDs were getting recon by tire. I mean, it just vehicles getting blown up, recoilless rifle. Um, it was a menace. That thing just you get on certain roads, and I mean, there's firing positions for every single. I mean, constantly. I'm like, man, that'd be a great spot. That'd be a great spot. Wow, and you can't possibly deal with all the possible areas where they could shoot you from. Half the buildings along the route were like old villages that were completely uninhabited. I mean, you could get in there and stash your cachet, your weapons, and just eat your meal. No one could see you, and just wait for us to pull up. This at any time could happen, and then you'd have a village that was occupied. I mean, it was just hit or miss on these routes. Um, but yeah, it was a very, my the only my I'll give here's one little story that was kind of funny. My body, I hadn't acclimated yet to patrolling, so I was getting super tired. I just could not keep my body awake. I mean, you drink all the rippets you could,
Right.
and then you'd get to a point where there's no more I can put in the system. I've drained it all out, and I think it was Route Michelle. Do you remember that route? It was a little
Oh,
short
yeah.
one.
It comes up all the time.
Doesn't it? Does it come up all the time? I'm not surprised, right? Um, we pulled up there, and it was just a small little cutoff with a little Afghan National Police outpost right there. And it went to a small turnaround, and then it narrowed into a small little wooden bridge that crossed over to a village. And I think across the street from us was a big village with maybe a market and some stuff. And there were people constantly flowing through there. So it was like a foot traffic trike vein, and it was a small road. I could see where they were at, so I just said, "Hey, I'll just send a half package." So a half package to clear that. And it was like A&A Briscoe in the what do you call it? How could I forget it? help me out here. The lead vehicle, the Husky.
Oh, the type
Uh,
of vehicle, I see.
Yeah, yeah.
Husky,
So
yes.
Husky, gun truck, A&A. And I think it was
Right.
Hallberg. Hallberg was in that truck, and him and I think Bird. But they started going down there, and I guess the enemy was there. It couldn't have been 200 meters from the Afghan National Police outpost.
Right, that's,
And this,
yeah, yeah.
it's so close. Like
Hmm.
it goes off, and I'm sitting there like kind of nodding. I hate to say it, and this ID goes. That was my first ID, and I was like, oh, I mean, adrenaline, man, like wide awake. Oh shit, right? And it goes off, and I could see it. So it goes off, and it missed the truck. It just goes up right next to him because it
Hmm.
was a very wide road, and I don't think they knew exactly where we were going to be in it. So they just kind of dug the hole and hoped that we'd go near it, and it was close. They almost nailed us. Geyser goes in the air. I mean, it ended up being like the post blast analysis. It was like 150 pounds, something like that. So it wasn't like a vehicle killer, but it was a concussion
Big one,
maker.
yeah.
Concussion maker. So it was like did a little damage to the fender. Didn't blow a tire out or anything. They turn around. A&A is like spraying bullets everywhere. And I'm like, oh shit, everybody good, everybody good. And Hallberg comes over the radio. We're good. We're turning around. Briscoe's turning. Everybody's turning around in place. Like we're not going any further. Like just stop here. So, like I said, that one guy that did the right seat ride with me would be like, everybody on the road, we're leaving. I'm like, let's 360. I want to talk to A&A. How the fuck did they put a bomb right there? You know what I mean? Like so, we do a quick perimeter. We got, all the vehicles, gunships facing down where the ID went off. I talked to A&A. I'm like, what are y'all firing at? I couldn't see anything. They said this is the best translation I could get was there were people there. They weren't supposed to be there. So I said, okay, hey, you know your country, man. So if you felt, they were more than farmers, then I'm with it. So they fired at those guys. I guess they went away or they went on the other side of there's a little bit of a buildup on the backside of Michelle and some mud huts or grape hut. So they must have gone back into those areas and just waited. So I set up my security perimeter down both roads. And then I grab the interpreter and I go talk to A&P. And I'm like, some guy comes down. He's wearing like a man dress. He doesn't look like a police officer, but he's in charge. It's the weirdest thing I've ever seen. He's in charge, and the guards are up there. There's two guys in that. Yeah, three guys total. One guy in charge, wearing a man dress, and then two guys that wore the normal A&P garb. And I'm asking him like, I said, I got a question, man. Like, no disrespect, but you guys are right here. You had to have seen people messing around in that road. Now, if they did it at night, I mean, that's one thing. But his answer was, our job is to guard the highway. We don't pay attention to that. And I just thought, wow, okay, bro. So that was enough of that. And I'll say this, a little bit of context. I had been going and meeting with the lieutenant of the A&A and trying to like build that relationship, because we were always taking them with us, and sometimes he would come. I think he was actually there that day, and there was this. They had an opinion of the previous guys that they were scared to get out of their vehicles, and rightfully so. They had somebody shot in the head and killed, so I understand why they were reticent. But I thought we're not. I don't want to. I just don't want to come here to someone else's country and be looked down on. Like I'm scared to get out of my truck. I just don't. I don't. I want to meet you where you're at. We're supposed to be doing the shoulder to shoulder thing. So I said we're not scared to get out of the vehicle. We'll get out when it's necessary. And so with that in mind, like I'm out walking around. I'm sure Simcoe's like, Jesus Christ, get back in the truck, But I'm like walking around and they're out like A&A's out like because we've been sitting there for about 30, 40 minutes now. EOD just shows up. I go talk with him. They're out in the grape fields, like grabbing grapes. A little bit of disorder from them. But EOD shows up. We talk to them. Their NCOs go get with Hallberg, and we deploy a gunship a little bit ahead of the formation to go down and look at the post blast analysis. I'll be honest. I thought the enemy had set it off and was gone. I had a sport by fire sitting there, guns trained in that direction. I did not expect anyone to have the balls to pick a fight with us with that posture, but they did. So we're sitting there, and I'm like, I'm gonna do what A&A's doing, to earn that respect. So I go and I got a big ass handful of fresh organic Afghan grapes.
Yeah,
And they were tasty as hell, man.
I
And
bet.
I'm eating them, and all of a sudden, an RPG goes off, and it scared the fuck out of me. I've never heard one go off, and it shook the ground. I don't know where I think they fired it at Hallberg's vehicle. Somehow they missed. I'm just trying to imagine from their perspective, like all these big ass 50 calibers. I'm just gonna try and come up real quick and shoot. And that's probably what he did. And he missed, but it shook the earth, and I about fell over. And I immediately ran. And about the time they fire that, like how they were pretty good with their ambush. They'd layer their guns. It'd be like IED, RPG, recoilless. Then they'd do all the small arms and pull the stuff off the battlefield. They were very good with it. So, the RPG went, and then all of a sudden, AK fire starts erupting. And so I run. It was me, Camacho, and a bunch of A&A guys. Because Camacho was walking around with me, kind of being my gun while I was with the interpreter. And we ran to the back of these two gun trucks that were in sport by fire position. They start firing. We're getting in this little firefight. And I'm like, oh, shit, I don't have a radio. This is early, and I was unprepared. The only radio I had was in the truck, which is kind of back in the center. So, and I remember that was the first time I heard bullets hit the earth, and it sounds like firecrackers, dude, or whip cracking. It was very interesting. So I run back to the truck, and I think probably at that point everybody had cover, and I was the only one that moved. So I'm I don't know if this happened or not, but I was told by Oreo that when I ran, they tried to shoot me and just missed. They just were not good shots. So I ran back to the truck because I needed to send something up to the talk to let them know we were in a firefight. I'm sure they could hear it because it wasn't very far away from the father. Probably like, what's fucking shooting going on? Wonder if it's our guys. So um, I ran back, and as soon as I got in the truck, Oreo, God rest his soul, was like, should we the boomerang was actually working. This is why I like the damn thing. He's like, we got fire from this direction, from here, from here. And he's like, when you ran, they tried to shoot. He was the one, he's my only proof, and he's not with us anymore. But he was the one that told me that because I didn't realize any of this was happening. When I was sprinting, though, I did notice the guys in the A&P tower were laughing at me, which pissed me off, dude.
I bet.
They were laughing at me while I was running. And so I sent my report, troops in contact, I'll follow information or whatever. And um, the firefight was still kind of going back and forth, but we had gained fire superiority pretty fast because of our numerical advantage. And there was some confusion. I ran over to A&A, and I'm like, what's going on with you guys? Because they're still like going to town. And our guys had kind of slowed down a little bit. And he said, there's somebody's directing their fire from the across the street in that town over there. I was like, what? So I grabbed Camacho. And there were three guys watching us, just standing there watching us. And they were saying those dudes have something to do with this. So I was like, Camacho, let's go. We grabbed the interpreter, and we crossed the street, and we didn't have the street cordon, dog. So there were cars trying to go through. And I had an Afghan guy with me too. He stops the vehicle. I wave him on. Camacho stops him again. It was like this, like they were like, "Oh my God, tell us what to do." There's all this like confusion, and I guess he didn't. He got kind of an attitude, and the A&A guy was like, shoves his. They had the old school M16, shoves it in that guy's face, says something to him, and Pashtun, and the guy just was like, "Okay." I said, "Get him out of here." He rolled through. We talked to these kids. I don't think they had anything to do with this. These Afghan guys were just like spooked about everything because they weren't from that area. It's like they were from some other part of Afghanistan. They weren't from there. They didn't know anybody. So they were probably it'd be like fighting an insurgency in Chicago when you're from Tennessee. I mean, it'd be like a foreign country. So that was all happening. I'm trying to remember how this concludes. Hallberg's truck finally gets back up there, and then the firing picks back up from them. Like these dudes did not entirely leave. They just waited for us to calm down and then found new fighting positions and started firing again. The firefight continues. And I was asking, and I didn't know at the time, I really didn't need anyone's permission to shoot an AT-4, but I was like, asking for permission from the battle space owner. I'm about to fire this thing into a gray putt. I just want to make sure I'm not going to get in trouble. They were like, this isn't really our calls. Basically, their, what their message was back to me. And Hallberg was about to fire, and I said, this fight's pretty much over. So we got the information we needed and finished our mission. But that was my first firefight, and it was. I mean, when nobody gets hurt in one of those, it's fucking awesome.
Mhm.
It's fucking awesome. There's nothing like it. It cannot be. I mean, short of like MMA or boxing or I just don't know anything. Skydiving. I did, when I got back, I did a lot of that stuff to try and like get that feeling again. And there's just nothing like it. I don't know how to explain it. There's no way to explain it. As long as no one's getting hurt, because once you have casualties, that takes it to a whole nother level. So I mean, as long as there's no casualties, it's just kind of like, fuck yeah, everybody's like fired up. And I don't know, like I was very proud of them. Nobody hesitated. Everybody did what they're supposed to do. I felt like I really didn't need to direct anything. They handled it all the way it's supposed to be. I'm doing C2. You guys are taking out targets that are moving in your sector. And everybody did what they're supposed to do. I think Manchester was a little pissed off because his 50 was giving him shit during most of it. And he was like, man. But later on he got plenty of chances to use it. But yeah, that was the first one. It was definitely an experience. And I had one other very interesting engagement. It was really my final probably the second most significant action I was in. And really the last one, because I rotated out to the talk, which is probably worth talking about at some point. But it's funny, me and Simcoe you remember the route Toronto was kind of notoriously bad.
Hmm?
Well, I think early on, I don't know if there was a guy that was evacuated because his leg was broken in an IED explosion. I want to say Sergeant Allen was in that vehicle.
Was it
But
Bill? Or no, it was Green.
it was a white guy. I don't remember his name.
Was it Green? Specialist Green?
Maybe. I just know I think he broke his arm in the IED blast, and it penetrated the hull and like concussed
I know which one you're talking about. I'll look it up.
this thing was like if I remember right, I might be exaggerating. It was hundreds and hundreds of, I mean, they probably put 3 or 4 50-pound, 100-pound bombs in the ground there. They knew where we were going to turn around down there. And it was the very end of our security in that battle space. So it was like perfect spot for them to do it. Well, it completely destroyed that vehicle. I think Sergeant Allen was in that. I don't know. But we did the QRF for that. I remember going down there and there was still some small, it was so interesting anyways, that same area, they basically said, stop going down there. There used to be it's a whole nother story I could tell you, but there used to be a very small strong point down there. And I mean, it was like an old building and then some HESCO barriers. And I mean, they had a creek flowing through the back of it. And I was like, I remember when I went in there to pick up a guy that was going on R&R for, it was an infantryman. I was just taking him back to the FOB so we could get on a helicopter. And we went in there and I was like, I think it was Haji Ramadan was the name of the little outpost. And they had a crater in there the size of a swimming pool, man. I'm not kidding you. And I was like, when I got in there, these guys were like not really wearing their gear. They were just whatever. They were kind of like, Restrepo level. They're just doing really whatever they want. Didn't have a lot of supervision. They're getting shot at every single day. And so they didn't give a shit. The standards were kind of like, we could die, so fuck it. That's kind of their attitude. I got in there and the guy was getting ready. They were getting his shit ready so he could get in the truck with me. And I was like, what the fuck happened here? He's like, yeah, we got in this tick and it was a bigger one. So we were worried they're going to try and overrun us. So we called in a guided bomb from a jet and it missed and landed in the center and vaporized a bunch of A&A guys. It was insane. Yeah. Vaporized these dudes. And I'm like, you didn't have any casualties? Nope. All US guys were good.
Oh.
But we lost like 3 A&A dudes. And I was like, I don't want to be in a strong point, man. But once they closed that one down because it just wasn't sustainable, they built Haji Ramadan 2, which was way stronger, way bigger, and pulled in just a little. So that little piece of the route there, they just closed it. And but that communication really wasn't relayed thoroughly to all the platoons. And fourth platoon was still going down there. But the rest of the hooligan platoons were like, no, that thing's cut off. We don't go down there anymore. So he was still going. And they were like, we don't know when these motherfuckers are coming because like it just because of that miscommunication, it mixed the pattern up so bad. Like they just didn't know when we were coming. So it just so happened we get down there and they're trying to build this HESCO or this Jersey barrier along the south side of the road to control movement between AOs and all this. And the contractor's like, we don't want to go down there, dude. Like they knew. Like we go down there in these trucks, the Taliban is going to shred us, dude. They're like, we won't go. So the battle space owner, the local one, was like, hey, can you guys just do us a favor and clear this road real quick, so we can get these guys down here? And I'm not. Look, I didn't really want to do it. I'll be honest. I was like, it's not part of my. It's not what I've been asked. It's not on my list of routes to clear today. I felt like I probably needed to talk to Captain Lau about it, but I talked to my platoon sergeant, and I love Simcoe. He said, hey man, these are good dudes. Let's do them a favor. And I said, all right, let's do it. And I didn't ask for permission. We just went and cleared it. Well, it turned out that motherfucker was laden with IEDs that day. And yeah, and I think we surprised them because the way they'd set it up, they had a primary one that was fairly large, and then they had a secondary one that was even bigger. And they didn't know we were coming. They thought we were going to turn around like we always do at Haji Ramadan 2, but we paused, talked to them, and then we said we'd do it and went down there. So we got all the way, we drove over all those IEDs, didn't even notice. Didn't pick them up, nothing. We had a Husky, everything. Didn't see them, didn't even know they were there. All command wire. And we get to the turnaround point where Haji Ramadan 1 was. I'm like, okay, we're almost done here. Let's go. Like 5 minutes away from being finished. And the Huskies heading out, and Turner just gets like a sea of like red clay and sand, or not clay, but like river sand. You remember down at that area, it was like very sandy. I mean, a sea of it just blew up in the air, completely engulfed him, man. I was like, huge ID, dude. Completely blew up his vehicle. And we just all stopped. We sat there. We're trying to get a hold of Turner. We're not sure what's going on. His radio's completely blown out, obviously. And finally, we're not seeing any movement. It's been like a minute or two. And we're like, fuck, do we have to extract him? Like, this is like the worst area to do this. Like, I mean, they've got all these firing positions. And in this area, it was like probably a 80, 90-degree firing position for them down onto this one concentrated part of the road. And half your gun trucks could not affect that firing point. It was very well thought out. I'm like, fuck. And then he finally comes over on a secondary radio. He's like, I'm good. I just can't open the top because the arm is laying over it. Can you guys extract me? We're like, yeah, just stay calm. We're going to come get you. And the guys were wanting to like immediately start. And I just was like, hey, easy. Like I had this gut instinct there was another bomb. And we were trained to look for secondaries. So I'm like, just let's get some gun trucks off the road and let's extract Turner. and we popped smoke and got him out of there, put him in, cross-loaded him in another vehicle. And then we were just sitting there on that high point. Actually, it was Manchester was like, hey, we should move. I think it was his idea. Like, I was just thinking, like, okay, I'm organizing recovery. I honestly, my situational awareness wasn't as good as it probably needed to be. So I'm grateful he said that, because he said, hey, we should move down by the Hesco Bears where it actually the earth gets a little lower and we can sit down in there. They can't shoot us as easy. So we moved the vehicles down in there, but the recovery vehicle was still in that like perfect kill zone. And we were debating, we were sitting there and they hadn't messed with us. And we were debating. I remember talking to, I don't remember who it was, but where do we which way do we bring the recovery vehicle in, along the road, or do we let them make their own decision? There was a gigantic secondary there. If I had said, yeah, just bring him along the road, like it for sure would have been a KIA on both those drivers in that what were the semi trucks we used?
The 916.
I believe so. Yeah, they were driving that thing. It had no V-shaped hole. It would have killed those dudes.
Yeah.
For sure. And I said, just let the mechanics decide which way they want to approach this, which was very hands off, maybe, maybe right, maybe wrong. I don't know. But the mechanics got there and went, yeah, we'll just go off route and come around to it from the part that we know is good, which was a great decision. I should fucking made that decision. But anyways, they pull in there. So me and Simcoe, we have our trucks kind of sitting out there, kind of rocking and moving to try and not be totally stationary. And we did get a report like, hey, somebody on a motorcycle just entered your AO. And I was like, oh, that's not good. They tried to give me an idea of where it was at. And this guy, I guess he maneuvered a recoilless rifle into the AO. And he took a shot at Simcoe. And it hit the bank right in front of his vehicle, and the tail fin flipped up and hit the gunner's hatch, right? I think it was Paiute. And we were like, oh shit, when those things fire, it's a sonic boom and then an instantaneous crash into whatever they're shooting at. So it's like, pow, pow. That's how it sounds. And I'm being a complete novice, quite frankly, at detecting, what projectiles or what. I thought they fired two RPGs at the same time. Like, seriously, I did. That's how much I didn't know. But that was the recoilless rifle. And Simcoe identified it pretty quick because he saw the tail fin. He's like, yeah, they're shooting the recoilless at us. So we changed our position again, and we still had to do the recovery. And we knew that recoilless rifle is just probably reloading, and we didn't know where they shot it from. And usually it leaves some kind of report, but we just, maybe they fired from inside a building and no back blast could be detected. But so we stayed out there, me and Oreo and Manchester and Simcoe and Paiute. And I don't remember who his driver was, but we stayed out there moving around, knowing that they could shoot again. I was really proud of Simcoe and the dudes because we literally put ourselves.
Sorry, we got like 30 seconds.
It's all good. We probably need to do another one.
No, we do. Just let's pause here.
Yep.
Okay.
So I was super proud of Simcoe's gun truck and mine because we literally put ourselves as recoilless target practice, and nobody complained. Nobody went, this is a stupid ass idea. Like, nobody said that. And I think they understood we had to have some far side security for the recovery team, or they were going to get fucked up. They would have been a soft target, and it just would have been a bad situation. So there's just no way I could allow that. And they just performed, man. I was impressed. They fired at us again. I know they missed, and they didn't get a lot of small arms out on us when the recovery was happening. But there was one point we got some other gun trucks to the far side. Once the recovery started, we got a Matt V, and there were a number of gun trucks. And then somebody saw, after they fired the recoilless and missed, the gunner run. I don't know. I couldn't see anything. Only the gunners could see where this guy was because they were up higher. And like 3 gun trucks were like, everybody, 250s, or 240 Bravo, excuse me, 240 Bravo, the Ma Deuce, 3 guns trained on this guy. And I'm like, what happened? Did we, somebody tell me that they saw it happen. And everybody was eager to say enemy KIA, dude. Everybody.
I bet, right.
I don't have any confirmation of it. I didn't go look at the body. Simcoe is begging me, please let me go. It's right there. I can just go and find his corpse and confirm. I'm like, no, dude, no, absolutely not. And we reported it as one enemy K. I saw it come. I saw it go through. So in my mind, if 3 gunners are saying we all trained in on a guy and he turned into whatever he turned into, I believe he's dead. I hope he is. But that was the high point of that. And then as we were leaving, there's some small arms fire exchanges coming. They saw we were leaving, so we start firing with them a little bit. And I guess he had a guy just sitting there on a wire waiting the whole time. And we never saw him. I never saw him. And we were looking, believe me. And we were on, so here's the road, here's the creek, and this is the T barriers. He thought, because the semi truck that did the recovery is so tall, he thought that we were on this side where the road is. So right when the truck got where the IED is, he set that thing off, but we were not on the road, and he couldn't tell the difference from how far out he was. But they had a big ass secondary there waiting to kill those guys. And thank God, things worked out the way they did. And we were on the way back. I remember like Simcoe was reporting all the people that were, affected by IED blast. And there was 5 or 6 guys that had to sit out the next day just because they were within a, shock wave of an explosion. And that's probably, I don't remember our total count as a company, but I know I think it was like what, 194, 100, something like that. What was the total count? Do you know?
Total, I think the highest, it was 165 or 168 was the highest total count of the company, at least up to the point that Gordius was there.
And a lot of those went off, so that's like a lot of shock waves, a lot of brain cells, man. I don't mean to laugh about it. I mean, I myself was blown up, and it was like it was an interesting experience, man. When I was off the line, I was trying to get, actually, I went on a really annoying mission with 4th Platoon. But anyways, before I get ahead of myself, so I remember getting back from that mission thinking, Captain Lyle's gonna fucking kill me, because I didn't even ask to go down to this place. And we went down there, and it was this huge event, man, helicopters and recoilless rifle strikes and 2 IEDs and destroyed vehicles. No casualties, thank God. But yeah, I thought he was going to kill me for not asking. But when I got back there, he was like, man, we were worried about you. You're here. You made it. Total welcoming. It wasn't like, why didn't you ask permission? I really thought he was going to do that, but he was just happy we made it back, And I really appreciated that he wasn't legalistic about it. Like, I don't know, legalism to me is you fight that in the Army a lot. And I think the enemy gains from legalism. There has to be some freedom of command. And, like needing to have your lieutenants notify you for a BIP when you're in another RC. I understand, like, you're not in control of your battalion. Maybe it feels that way, but really that's that's a ground level call. I don't personally feel me in the battle space center need anyone else to ask about that. That's just like the guy who controls the aircraft in the area and me on the ground. Can I blow us up? Yeah, you're clear. All right, go. No, wait. I gotta ask. I gotta send a message all the way to RC South, and it's like we're waiting. I had a cordon on Highway 1. And if you block that road for even 5 minutes, it's like a dam filling up with cars. And they're unstructured people, so they're just like trying to get around your cordon and like trying to squeeze through your vehicle. And I'm like, I've got I've got a radio operated bomb right here. I'm trying to blow up, and these people are just dying to like break my cordon. And these guys are shooting pin flares everywhere and like trying to stop very gratuitously too, I might add. And I shouldn't have listened to the ANA, but this one very cavalier guy came over and was like, basically through the translator was like, hey, these people, it's Ramadan, man. They're all thirsty and they haven't been drinking and eating, dude. You can't leave them all balled up here in this heat like this because it was taking a lot of time because I couldn't get the permission to blow this thing up verified through battalion. That's when I went, all right, I'm done fucking with this. Blow this thing up and let's get on with it. And yeah, I got in trouble for that, but I didn't think, okay, fine. I kind of was in a bad mental state anyways, like as far as career oriented army stuff goes. I really could care less at that point whether, you know, it's just something takes over when you're patrolling like that all the time. You're not politics and like where's your career gonna land. To be fair, I never really was that guy. But I don't know, you got officers like Kennedy that really balanced that out really well. I thought he was a great officer. I hope you get in touch with him. But so anyways, I wasn't on the line past I think it was like 5 months, something like that. And then I rotated. There was a decision like, should we send him to battalion or keep him here? Like, obviously, we don't want to put any undue pressure on the replacement lieutenant, because that loyalty's there. Between me and the troops, and now they got a new lieutenant that needs to be able to have, freedom to create the new relationships. But I think Lieutenant Axton actually recommended that I stay and do the company intelligence stuff. I don't know why he thought I was going to be good at it, but he put my name in the hat, and Captain Lau was like, yeah, it's a great idea. I guess they wouldn't have had one otherwise.
Oh,
So
wow.
if they sent me to battalion, I don't think they were getting any lieutenants to do that. I guess maybe Matern or somebody could have done it, but so they give me this billet, and I remember like being not that excited about it, but and now I didn't want to leave the line, to be honest. I could just stay being a platoon leader. That would have been awesome, but it has to come to an end. And I get in the talk, and I remember Captain Lau came in and said, listen, we want to make this your show, your thing. Like, you build this however you want. And I'm not going to tell you what to do. I just want this to be a valuable shop that adds value to the daily missions. So make that look however you want. And there's already kind of like a very small protocol, like receive battalion level reports, break them down into company level, and then attend a weekly debrief with the people that controlled us at CAF, which is very boring. They're nice people, but it's like, I'm just telling you this stuff. You're doing nothing with it. So, at least I thought that. But First Sergeant Gordius comes in. He's like, hey, man, this is like, he really like, he had some great ideas that I ran with in there. I got to give him some credit. Like a lot of the terrain model, like he had a vision for that I think was why it became what it was. I just executed his vision and added some of my own spice to it. I think between the two of us, we made it pretty valuable. Like, because I had been out in the AO, I could take this battalion nonsense that really was just like, what do I do with this? Like, if you've never been out there, you just break it down into company level terminology and just pass it out to lieutenants. They look at it and go, okay. I started taking it and like using the technology we had available to see all the previous SIGACs, especially in areas we'd never been. And I started networking on them. And I don't mean to like make myself sound cool. It's just my story, like you said. And I started networking with brigade assets that could get satellite imagery like that. If we're going somewhere we've never been, if you look on the system we have, it's not even going to show the roads because it's so old, so dated. It's from like 2009 and half the roads weren't bulldozed. But you go to the shop, if you're cool with them, they will give you satellite, it lets you skip the line because every infantry unit is trying to get satellite imagery. So I developed relationships that got us to the front of the line. So our guys needed something I could go get the imagery of where you're going. This is what it looks like. Now you can plan your turnaround points. Now you actually use this, you know? So I remember like there were a few IEDs. I worked the night shift for a little while, and me and Sergeant Allen like were reviewing Puma footage. We had this one Puma operator that was awesome from 4th Platoon. I mean, always. That's what it was. I requested, I want to see 1st Platoon was going to go down this. You guys were notoriously thrown on like routes no one's been down that are just enemy like strongholds. I'm not kidding. There was one south of Sea of Choi that you guys opened up that I believe it was y'all. No, it wasn't you guys. It was second. I apologize. It was when Juan was in charge of second. Juan and Lieutenant Abrams. But all night. So I requested Puma footage. I got it. Me and Juan, or me and Alan were evaluating this, and it was just so obvious. Like we found exactly, I mean exactly where this ID was, man. I mean, it was right underneath 2 trees over the road. They had created these little road, you know, if they don't want civilians to drive where they put an IED, they just put little rocks in the road to segment the road off. So the Puma is watching this motorcycle hit these things and detour it and go. And then we see, oh, so obviously they don't want anyone using this section of road. And then we see this lone guy walking. And he walks right underneath the trees. And then he's gone. And so the drone's like, obviously, this is important. It circles. We keep looking down. He spends about a couple minutes there and then he walks off again. Like he was clearly checking the device to make sure, okay, the battery's still good or whatever. I don't know what he was doing. Well, week later, 2nd Platoon goes there. We made this presentation like the bomb is here. The bomb is here. It's right here, dude. I'm telling you, like with so much certainty, it's right here. Abrams was like, yes. I recommend Miklik, anything like just don't send a vehicle in there. They go through so much bullshit getting there that they're like, I mean, I think they had one IED detonation and they had to replace a truck and the crew in it. They kept going and they found 3 or 4 more before they got to the very end of the route where that big mammoth IED was. And I used to have a picture of the hole, the hole, what was left. I don't know how I think Shalhoub somehow snapped a photo and it got out of theater somehow. But I used to have it in it was just like a hole, all the cages blown off, all the wheels blown off. And Sergeant Juan was in that thing, man.
So hold on, the IED you gave them intel on, they still got hit by it?
They still hit it, bro.
Okay.
I mean, it was exactly where me and Alan said it would be. Precise. I mean, the problem was after that long ass day, they just we're done like getting out of these trucks and exposing ourselves and deploying Mikliks and you know we're already tired, man. It takes a lot of time to get that robot set up to run the Miklik out there and like so they just sent the Husky forward. We know that thing's hit or miss, bottom line. So it went over that spot, detected nothing, and moved forward, and then boom. So I'm just like, man, there was another instance I gave him a turn, this detailed report. He was going to an AO we'd never been to. And he was like, this is exactly what I need, man. Thank you very much. And he loved it. He was pouring over it the night before and getting ready. And I targeted this one part of the road where they were going where it was very clear, like the enemy loved this spot. All the wires went in one direction till he gets directed down to Chilliwack, where you know some bad things happened, and they send 4th Platoon, and he doesn't get the intelligence packet or the debrief because they switched him at the last second, and then he smacks right into an IED right where that intelligence packet said it would be. They had a big pile of rocks there, like construction rock, to fix the road, and you had to go around it. The first truck, boom. Yeah, so the talk was the talk wasn't interesting. Nobody wanted to be there. Like no, like the platoon, like if you got sent to the talk, it was like a shameful thing. It was like you were being disciplined or something. Like you're gonna be the radio operator at the talk. Man, you're just like, get me out of here. Like nobody liked doing that. Nobody. If you're a frontline engineer, you don't want to be in the talk. But it's an essential function. And I thought between Grewell, Allen, like all these great guys got put there because they were, concussed so bad, but they were all really intelligent, competent NCOs. So it made working in the talk pretty freaking cool. I mean, I had my own little thing over in the back with Sergeant Cruz, who was super helpful to me in there, and Rigdon was also very helpful. And he had actually that young man had deployed to RC East, I think, previously, and had a decently rough little deployment. So he was no stranger to Afghanistan. But it was when Kennedy went on leave, they asked me to be the XL. And that's where I realized like the importance of the talk, man. It is I mean, you're like you're Kennedy, right? And it's like and to Dan Lyle's like, this is not an insult on him, but he was very much like, XO, you run it. If there's something that needs a decision from the commander, I'm in my office. He wasn't micromanaging a lot. Which is a good thing, I think. I mean, this is not like World War II where you need the commander like up the ass of everything, So but the XO was super, super engaged. It's just that the level, that position required it. So I'm like, okay, I got 3 platoons out right now. I've got QR. I mean, it was so much to manage, dude. And higher ups need all these reports from you, storyboards every day. I mean, it was so much work. That's where I kind of got a relationship with Sergeant Grewell because I had to work with him. He was the NCO in there. And he's super easy to work with. You leave him alone, he gets it done. And then at night we had Sergeant Allen, and you know him, he's solid guy. But yeah, I thought the talk was nobody ever came in there. The soldiers didn't want to be in there. You don't want to go to the talk. That's where the first sergeant is.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, you want to stay away from him and the commander and that scrutiny. But yeah, I don't know, man. I don't remember and there was a certain point where my attitude started kind of just, everybody goes through it, I think, a complacency or just a bad attitude about maybe it was just me, I don't know. But at some point I just remember getting real negative about the whole thing. Just people getting killed, maimed, fucked up. What is this all about? Like these questions start really kind of entering your mind. And if you're not in a position where people are trying to kill you regularly, it's a lot harder to push that out. If you're on the line, it's like everybody's an enemy, everybody's a threat. I don't really care what their side of it is. But you got time to think and to talk. You got time to well, at least I did. I had time to wonder well, what are we getting killed? What are we getting killed for? What is this all about? Is this mission really have any chance of succeeding? And I'll tell you the truth. I remember they sent a reporter down it was actually an Army reporter, and she was asking I think she omitted everything I wrote because you can actually go find it on Google right now, but it was her saying, that we're working with the Afghan National Army. They're making great progress in their efforts to become, route clearance engineers. And I just said, I don't see any way possible for these guys to do what we do. It's not possible. I just don't think they're professionally prepared. I know Sergeant Palaio actually did a pretty good job with them. He trained them. He trained them, man. I mean, he really did. But you can only get so much out of these guys. I mean, half of them were on drugs. Their culture is very different. I think they knew there's no way we're going to be a Western democracy. They wouldn't have put it in those terms, but there's no way we're going to sustain this when these people leave. So let's just enjoy it while there's money and food and paychecks. Like, let's just enjoy it. But and you saw what happened when we pulled out.
Mhm.
It collapsed like a cheap tent, man. And it was always going to. I hate
It
to say
was
it.
always going to. Yeah.
It was always going to. I don't care how fast or it'd been nice if we'd have got out with a little more dignity, but the result was always going to be a failure, or I don't think that government ever had a chance. Ever. Um but yeah, coming home, how much time do we have?
So we are about 20 minutes into it. So we got another 20, 25.
All right, I'll try to I do have one more recoilless rifle story that was interesting. And
Sure.
and one of these things where I swear all my like you got people like Matern and um Axton and I don't think Njoku had I don't think he had any major casualties. And Abrams that had these like serious casualties. Not nothing they could ever do about it. It's not my point. It's just I just had this like stupid luck. Like I don't even know how to explain it. Like should have had casualties. And they just didn't, it just didn't happen. I don't know how else to say it. Just purely luck. Like we're riding down Toronto and it's just a day where the Taliban has decided they're gonna fuck us up and like completely surprised us. Like we get all the way down, they've got their ambush set up. We turn around, we're getting ready to leave. Not a care in the world. They wait till our last truck is in the intersection and they open up fire with the recoilless. It cuts the fuel line. It actually hits blows the cage off, cuts the fuel line, and the trucks basically no longer can move. The fuel is pouring out, which is all that's obviously not a good situation, right? All this fuel below your truck. So it cuts the line. Niehaus comes over the radio. He's like, hey, we can't move. This is not good, And he's kind of had that like sarcastic, that's just how he came over the radio, like, we can't move here. And then the second shot came and went through the door handle, in the back of the seat and into the AC unit and just lodged itself there. And it did create a casualty, but it wasn't, a life-altering casualty or anything. It just some shrapnel went into the back of Specialist Dow. But the funny thing about that, I don't know if you know all the details. When we went to the turnaround point, the driver was like, "Man, if I keep driving, I'm gonna run off the road. Somebody, hey, Dow, can you jump in?" And he was like, "Yeah, sure." And he's a small guy. He moved the seat, dude. He moved the seat. So he moves the seat, and if he hadn't, I mean, it would have gone into the body of the driver and for sure killed him. I don't see how that. So, anyways, it didn't shoot metal everywhere. It didn't blow off Manchester's legs. It was standing right there, right past his legs. And so they start getting peppered with all this machine gun fire because their vehicle's completely immobilized now. The Taliban's opening up from two sides, peppering the vehicle. Paiute got some shots off because the convoy was still moving. And there was buildings here, and they were waiting for the gun trucks to get in a place where maybe one would be able to return fire. So Paiute returns fire at some guy in some grape rails, according to his testimony. And I pull over and get everyone out of the way, and me and Camacho's truck race back there, and I jump out, and I go right to the back door, and I'm not, in the back of my mind, I'm like, there could be some seriously injured people in here right now, and I'm maybe I'm ready for this, maybe I'm not. You know what I mean? It's kind of like we'll see. Opened up the door, and they're smoking cigarettes. Nobody's hurt, man. I'm like, what the fuck? Thank God. So we towed that truck back, and it just looks like, I mean, it was just destroyed, man. I think, that's one of those situations where a well-designed ambush is almost impossible to really react to at all with any kind of effectiveness. It's just they know where they're going to shoot at you from. They know how they're going to layer it. You're just going to get shot at and blown up, and they're going to be gone. You're not going to get a chance to shoot back. So, and that was, I'd say, most of these engagements were just them having complete surprise, knowing exactly where they're going to shoot, where they're going to egress to. It's very frustrating. I mean, it has like a Vietnam-esque kind of feel to it, where you just never see these guys. They do damage to you and they're gone. So, yeah, that was crazy. Recoilless rifle was a difficult weapon to be in the area with. But I will say, I want to say something about Sergeant Smith. He was a super duper high speed, competent NCO. An asshole, which he would admit. But whenever we got in I was in his truck when we got blown up, and I was completely disoriented. I didn't know, smoke fills up the cab. It's like this toxic chemical smoke. You breathe all this shit in, it throws you everywhere. And I'm sitting there like, where the fuck are we? This guy's like instantly like, is everyone all right? I mean, he was just like, he didn't go through the explosion. Everyone else did. It was like, this man was a fucking pro. That's the best way I could put it. He was a pro at what he did. And he'd been blown up a number of times. I think, maybe it just gets easier. I don't know. But I didn't know where the fuck I was. And he's already asking me, you good? Everything cool? In that NCO way. When we evacuated that truck, I went and stood in the blast hole like a dumbass. I was just like, they're securing the AO and calling recovery, and I'm standing in the blast hole trying to take a picture like an idiot. But that's what it is. I mean, I don't know why I did that, but me and I can't remember who it was. Whoever was in the back with me, we were told go to the Buffalo. So we were walking to the Buffalo on a road that probably still had IEDs in it. We just decided we walk. Hey, if it can't set off a vehicle, it's not going to set us off. So we were just walking down this, and I mean, it was like crater, 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 crater. I mean, just I don't know why we kept driving down that road. I don't know why. It's just, hey, we need you to clear this again. It's like, Jesus. They must have thought these motherfuckers don't give up. We blow up their vehicles, they just come back. What would that be like to be on the other side and see, like, no matter what we do, they just keep going? But yeah, that was an interesting experience, man. So yeah, when it was time to leave, it was surreal leaving. In fact, I had kind of I don't know about you. Did you take leave
I
during
did.
Well, I didn't want to take leave. And when I got home, I had to go home on emergency leave because my dad was really sick and near death. So I went home and visited him in the Vanderbilt hospital, and he recovered and he's good now. But it just was weird being back and knowing I had to go back, and this feeling like I can't really be present here because all I can think about is I'm falling behind on understanding the AO. I'm not there. Like, it was kind of a weird pull to get back. And I remember I was getting in, my aunt was at the hospital. We were in the car garage, and I was in the car, and she didn't, I didn't even think this would be a thing, but she shut the trunk, dude. I don't know if that's happened to you, but she shut the trunk. And I mean, I went into fucking like serious, like, oh, shit, like, because it simulates that IED muffled sound when you're in when you're in a vehicle and it's kind of got that airtight compressed compartment and an IED goes off outside. It sounds eerily similar to a trunk shutting. That's the only thing these days that can still get me is a trunk shutting when I'm not ready. And it has to make that muffled sound. And it's just like, it can still get me. 4th of July was a little annoying for a couple years, but really now it's not a big deal. It's just, I swear to God, like when it comes from the side, that's where I'm like, it just makes me uncomfortable. Because I feel like I need to start making decisions. You know what I mean? Like
Sure.
somebody's shooting at us from a fucking weird spot. Like that's an ambush. So I mean, you know, a firecracker going off in front of me. Oh yeah, it's great 4th of July, but to the side, you're like, oh, shit. So yeah, I'm sure it may be worse for other people, but
Sure.
yeah, that was a weird experience. But going back was surreal. It was like, shit, we're going back. Like, kind of excited and like weirded out by this all at the same time. And then the worst possible thing, my friend had a wedding in Austin. He's like, "You're the best man." I'm like, "Oh, great. Yeah, I'll come be the best man." Like it was a month after we got back, dude. So I'm like trying to be social with all these highly like super city folk, like inner city, like artsy. Because my friend was an artist for a video game company, so all his peers were like artsy people. They weren't army guys, man. You know, they were complete opposite of me. And I did my best to like. I gave a great best man speech, which at Sergeant Juan's I botched it so bad. I botched it horribly. I mean, it was bad, but it was still a great wedding. But yeah, I did a great job at Josh's, and but it was just weird, man. And all those people were. I was super pissed because some of them were like, he's. I said, "What'd your friends think, man? Did they like me? Did they get along with me?" I don't even know why I asked, but he was honest with me and said, "Yeah, they said you were nice, but you're kind of a bro." I was like, "Fuck them." You know what? Like, what do you? I wish you knew where I just was for a year.
Right.
How could I be? I'm sorry, I wasn't in an inner city, like at the cool. I don't know. I was just deeply offended by that, and not one of them cared about to care to ask me about my army. None of them. They didn't ask any questions. They were just kind of in their own little world, and that's fine. You serve and you don't expect anything uh, as a soldier, marine, sailor, airman, whatever you are. It's a service, right? So I mean, you don't expect accolades, but I think the whole getting out experience for me was just I didn't I just I couldn't have predicted the way it actually was. Like the way I thought it would be and the way it was like people I thought would want to know details. I really didn't want to talk about any details, but nobody really actually wanted to know any details. Like, so you were in the army, okay, yeah, and then yeah, oh really? Tell me about it. And then you start to tell them, and they lose interest. And I
Mhm.
just thought, oh, I thought that story was fucking cool, but yeah, like man, they're not. Nobody really cared, bro. I hate to say that.
Yeah.
I mean, even family members. I was very surprised to see that, like, they
Hmm.
just wanted it to be in a box, like thank you for your service. You're a hero. We love you. We're proud of you, but really don't care about the details. I just don't like. Now I won't understand it anyways, and that's really what it was. Like they're not going to understand it, and they're going to be sitting there like not knowing what to say, so they just want it to end. And I get that, but I just didn't expect that that's how it would be. You know, I thought if I'm sitting here with Dick Winters or like Bill Garnier from the 101st, and he's telling me a war story, I'm fucking dialed in. That's just how I would be. And maybe those people are out there, but I just didn't experience that. I really don't think I know anybody unless they're a vet that can really participate. And even then, like if they didn't serve in Afghanistan, it's such a unique place.
Right.
That whole experience was so uh unique. I'm sure Iraq was unique, you know. I didn't go there, thank God. But yeah, it was a crazy deployment, dude. And yeah, I didn't do. I'll be honest with you. I as long when I was in, you know, after I went to that wedding, and then they were like, "We're gonna make you an XO," and I thought, kind of reinvigorated my spirit a little. Like maybe I'll stay in and go to sapper school and try to make a career out of this. And I actually like the 571st, man. Captain Cato was a good dude. Um, First sergeant was a great guy. Um, and everybody there was cool. All the new lieutenants were cool. I planned some great training exercises for them, you know, based on my Gordius experience. Overwhelmed all their leaders. It was cool. But when I left the 14th Engineers, everybody was an outsider to me that I didn't trust. That I didn't even want to know. I don't know how this happened. It was just like, I can't really be in any unit but the 14th engineers in the 22nd. If I said, I mean, I was just done. I'm like, I don't want to be in any other units. I don't want to be in some battalion staff. I just can't, like, it just wasn't, I'm not, I need to be closer to the actual work, you know? And then, battalion work's important. I don't want to tear it down, but it just wasn't for me. I just didn't have the zeal to go any further. So really, I started getting I kind of lost my purpose. I didn't want to climb the ladder in the army. I guess I need to get out, but I still have this huge commitment. It was really kind of a shitty place, and I just was like, I don't want to be here anymore. But I have no idea what I want to do, which was a bad combination. So then you start getting into like, I don't know, self-destruction mode kicked in my last year in the army, and I was basically flunking out of captain's career course because I wasn't even trying. I just was like, I don't give a shit. I don't care. I don't like any of these people. I was having confrontations with everybody in there, trying to get in fights with people. It was just clearly I had some PTSD, I think. It was just like angry at everyone. I don't trust anyone who wasn't 14th engineers. So I'm sure a psychologist probably have something to say about that. But
Probably.
yeah, right. So I was in a little bit of denial about it all too. I remember my last when I was out processing, I saw First Sergeant Gordius, and he was like, don't underestimate PTSD, something to that effect. He was like, it can sneak up on you more than you think, man. And I was like, I actually didn't shrug that off. I thought, that seems like a hard thing to really argue with. So, of course, I've yet to this day to seek any help from anyone, and that could have gone really bad, but it has worked out. I hate to say it. I don't want to discourage anyone from getting help or thinking that there's any shame in it, for sure. I just always knew I was good, man. I don't know how to put it. Like, I was angry, and then when I got out, I moved to Washington State thinking that this was going to be like a mecca for me, or like I just wanted to go back there so bad. I left Leonard Wood and moved there, and I lived with Ritter for a while, and everything just devolved. Like, all my money ran out, and I did some interviewing, but partly like my personality and what I really wanted to do was unknown to me. And I felt like I was selling out a little bit, so it was coming through in the interviews, and I was doing poorly. I was ranking like 10th out of 20 people. It was just not even top four. One time I got top four, and then they still didn't hire me. So interviews just were not working out. That's not the fault of these companies. It was just me. I just was in a bad headspace. Probably just mildly carrying around some PTSD. And a part of it, I just didn't know what I wanted to do. I mean, I knew what I didn't want to do, and a lot of this stuff was just more dog and pony. Like, I don't want to be a cog in a machine. I just don't. I'm tired of it. In the army, you kind of are. So, I was ready to just evacuate that space. And if all my money gets spent up and I'm trying to figure it out, it's worth it. But so, for captain in the army, right? That's where I was at. To being a janitor. I was a janitor, bro. And look, this was like, I don't know how to explain it. I mean, I'm mopping floors at night, thinking to myself, like, what am I gonna do with my life? Like, what am I gonna do? Like, if anybody knew, like, I was a janitor right now, they would, tell me I should be using my army resume and all this crap. And I don't want to do that. So that, combined with a little bit of just general anger at the army as an institution, and that's a whole nother conversation. But I just wanted to disappear. That's plainly as I could put it. I didn't want any real connection with anybody. I was reaching out to Sergeant Juan a little bit when I first got out. We kind of had our relationship maintaining, and then he said something to me. I don't even think in his mind it was just a normal conversation. I took it the wrong way, and then didn't talk to him for like 10 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like a jackass. And I'm sure at this point, like I need to just pick up. And if you watch this, I'm going to call you. It's just, and I have his number. I just haven't done it. But I think it was just emotionally unstable. I was just emotionally unstable, dude. And poor Ritter and his wife had to deal with it. And yeah, so I just wandered around Washington with bad relationships and, angry that I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I started trying a lot of things though, and I mean in a productive way. Like I don't know. I wasn't afraid to give things a try, be broke. I mean, at one point after that janitor job, I was like, a friend of mine was like, you know what? My neighbor is an equine veterinarian. You want to work for him? Might be good for you. And I was like, yeah, why not? So I went and worked for this guy that, I basically was his groundskeeper for all his horses, and like we're chopping down trees and doing a bunch of cool outdoor stuff. And uh, I learned a little bit about horses, how to ride them. And that was actually a nice little break from having to figure out life. I just was like, I'm just going to hang out on this little farm here at this guy every day. And it kind of put me back together a little bit. It was like a nice decompression. And, but you can't really brag about that. And you can't, people just expect, oh, you're an officer, so you should be doing something respectable, not being a janitor, not working on somebody's farm. Like that stuff is like, so I thought, rather than try to explain all this shit, I'm just not going to talk to anybody. So that's what I did. Um, but I never had any suicidal ideations, man. Never had that. I don't know why. And I never, didn't make friends or anything or shut in myself. I mean, I just went out and had a life. For some reason, I just didn't want, I just wanted to flush my army experience. I don't know why I wanted to, but I did. I flushed it, man. I didn't want to talk to anybody at all. And year after year, my opinion of this softened. And I finally, after a lot of different sales jobs and um, physical labor jobs, I got into construction at some point. Like a lot of people that don't know what the F they want to do. I saw how much money you can make in it though. And I got a little experience with an old Marine started a company as a friend of mine. And he's like, "Hey, you should do sales for me." This was like 2020, actually, coming out of COVID. And I had been doing construction a little bit, but he was like, "You should do some sales for me, construction sales." I thought, that sounds cool. Did a pretty good job. He offered me a little piece of his company, and then we built it together in Washington for a few years. I learned how to run a construction company. And then I moved. I didn't want to be in Seattle anymore after COVID, and moved back to Tennessee and started a company here. And I now own an S corporation called the American Contractor Group. And yeah, it's veteran owned, and I put the 22nd Engineer flag in the logo. It's a great company. It's growing pretty quick too, and we're picking up. It's a shitload of work, man. Oh my God. I work harder now than I ever did. I mean, not physically and emotionally, but well, no, emotionally, but it's not the same. It's not the same kind of work as Afghanistan, but it's a lot of work. I mean, I'm up, I work, there's decisions to make every day. There's problems to solve every day. There's variables every day. I love it. You know what I mean? I like being close to the action. I don't want to be, even though in this situation I'm constantly trying to outsource everything I do to some new employee. Okay, you do logistics, you do the estimating, so I'm that's the goal is to employ my way out of work.
Hmm.
But we got a ways to go. But things are going good. It's only year two. Um, I think the important thing is I have something that's mine, something that I believe in, something to pour myself into. And if I would have found this earlier, I would have been a lot better off sooner. That'd be my tip to anybody that is getting out of the military and is confused. Start trying things, start testing, and take a personality test. I know that sounds crazy, but take the Big Five personality test, figure out the basic components of your personality, and then go do something that's suitable to the, where your strengths are. I mean, or just follow your intuition. I didn't do that, and I just slowly arrived at, I think I'm gonna run a construction company. And it's working out. I got a great girlfriend. I hope to marry her, and it might be a little too late for us to have kids, but you never know. Miracles can happen. People can move their seats up and not get hit by rockets and shit. I mean, anything can
Right.
happen. But yeah, I mean, we really, when I look back on 22nd Engineers, it was full of exceptional NCOs. It was full of great officers. I mean,
Hmm.
to be honest, I mean, I think the NCOs are far better than the officers. I mean, I'm just going to be real. We just had great NCOs, great NCOs, man. We had a unique challenge. That battlefield was very dynamic. It was kinetic, um, all kinds of stuff, man. I mean, and I didn't actually. You mentioned the reporter during one of our breaks, Jeff Van Sant from Fox, and he was a cool dude. I've shown that program he ran, 30 Days in Afghanistan, to so many people. Like, you want to know what we did? Watch this. And I mean, it was like they're like, "Oh, wow, he did that."
Hmm.
And that sort of shows you. It doesn't even come close to like the real. What your book will tell will blow that out, and all these interviews combined will really tell the story. I mean, but Jeff was a cool reporter. I mean, I think there's a tendency for platoon sergeants in particular to not want any outside people in their patrols, because it just kind of erodes cohesion a little. Like, well, what is this person supposed to do? That we never trained with them. If something happens, like, they're just going to be running around.
Mm.
So they don't want that, But everybody's passing the buck on this guy, and I'm like, yeah, tell him to come ride with us. Put him in Hallberg's truck. He wants to be in the front where all the action is. Put him with Hallberg. Hallberg was like, I'll take him. He was all motivated, and he definitely. I mean, he got on. I think we were all worried about OPSEC and all this, but or First Sergeant Gordius was. We didn't really. I don't think we even thought about it for 1 second. But this guy's recording us finding a RCID. He was actually involved. His truck was involved in a tick off. You remember that really rural? Everything was rural, but that little city, San Jose?
Hmm.
And then they had that road we only occasionally went down on the backside. It was a route. I could actually say the history of it. That route, the main road through San Jose City, was so bad when the Russians were running Afghanistan. They used to get, piled up convoys up there from, ambushes and stuff. They said, we need to bulldoze a route around the city, so we don't have to go through the city anymore. And they made that road originally as a bypass. And then it's funny, when we get there, now going through the city is safe, but that little side road was like a shithole. And it completely reversed. And so we were on that road. We had dismounts that day. And I talked to the infantry guy out the door, and he was like, yeah, we're just going to walk in front of you. Like, that's a great idea. Walk on the road in front of us. And I know, but that was the plan. Like, I didn't make the plan. But so he's out there right in front of us. If we hit an ID, it
But
for
no,
sure done some kind of damage to those dismounts. But there wasn't anything in the road that day. But the Taliban, I guess, was aware we were there. And our vehicles were getting stuck in these previous blast craters that had turned into like little lakes. And Hallberg was the point vehicle, and then it was me. And he'd gotten over the obstacle, and then he didn't want to go forward. The infantry was a little bit ahead of us, and they started taking fire. And you could see it all kicking up on the road. And Hallberg's like, they're taking fire out there in front of us. I said, well, go push up there and give him a gun truck. And he did. He pushed up there, and I don't remember if he engaged. I think he did. But that lieutenant on the ground started calling in artillery fire or mortar fire, excuse me. And about the time my truck got up there, they were starting to rain in, and that pretty much ended the engagement pretty fast. But Jeff got a taste of it right there. I was like, I was just proud. I was happy he got the footage that he probably came to get, and that people weren't like, I don't want to take this guy. Put him in the back where he's not going to see anything, you know. But yeah, Jeff is cool. I'm glad he's involved. That's cool.
Yeah, I was looking at the map. I see intersection of Fredericton, Victoria.
Victoria. Yeah.
I think that was it.
No, Victoria was where Dow was hit by the recoilless.
Yeah, and then there's RTE, and it got faded, unless it got wet at some point, but it looks like bank something. I don't know. I'll show you the map later. I don't see an obvious route that was though. Corner Brook maybe?
No, in corner.
A ways off from there. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it was funny. The Canadians like had all these routes named after beer and stuff. And as soon as we get in there, we got to be all professional and change it to these, official military terms. And I got to be honest, anytime I've ever been around a Canadian officer, they're like levels of professional. I mean, maybe it's because they're smaller and they have less people that they need to deal with, but I've always thought the Canadians were super sharp every time I've ever worked with them.
Huh.
I don't mean like in a military, like in operations, but just in garrison, they were always really sharp. Never met like a soup sandwich Canadian. I just like, man, I don't know. They seem high speed.
Yeah, I haven't met a lot. I mean, I've seen them over there. I didn't spend a lot of time engaging with, but I don't know.
Well, I'm glad we're allies with them. That's all I'm saying. I mean,
fair enough, right?
But yeah, it was, dude. There's, Afghanistan is a immovable experience from one's life. I mean, it's almost like if I could go back, I'd tell myself, well, you're gonna have to do something cool, really cool, to like make this second place, because this is fucking crazy. This was a crazy thing to do. Nobody wins there. Think about that.
Right.
Nobody wins there historically. It's just so difficult. And I mean, yeah, I mean, there's just the logistical challenge. Really looking back, I'm like, it's amazing that we were able to have lobster at our farm. I mean, in the middle of fucking Afghanistan. Somehow they're getting lobster in there. I'm like, this is incredible. Like that part of it, I think people, if they heard like, you're eating lobster? Yeah, it was like every now and then they had it, or they'd have some guy from Africa frying up homemade curry or some shit. Like it was, that DFAC was, I mean, it was a morale booster, dude. Morale booster. Is there anything else I need to?
No, I mean, that was great. I've got tons of great notes and quotes and just lots of stuff I want to share with you.
Well, I certainly look forward to coming out of my shell now and re-engaging with people. If it's not too late to do it, I mean, I probably need to call Sergeant P. Did you send me his number?
I look, I'll put you in touch with anyone you want to be in touch with. And honestly, that like literally warms my heart to hear that stuff.
Yeah.
Seeing
Yeah.
everybody getting reconnected, it feels good.
Yeah, it certainly needs to happen. I mean, you know, you won't take any credit. You're not going to allow anyone to give you any credit, but you certainly are facilitating quite a bit here. You should be proud of yourself, man.
I'll talk about that later.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm fired up to read this book, dude. And you want notes, you're going to get them. So I got this is the end of my story, man. And
All right.
but I will say this for the record. In the next 4 years, really it should be three. My original goal was $10 million company in 5 years. So we're about to be at the end of two. I'd like to hit 3 million by the end of this year. I will smash through the $10 million barrier at the end of 5 years.
I love hearing that.
It's
I
gonna
can
happen.
relate to those goals. Yes, I
It's
love
gonna
hearing that.
happen.
And I want to see all of us win. So let's celebrate when that happens.
Right on.
Okay. Thank you for your time and appreciate you sharing your story.
Likewise, Joey. I appreciate you, man. You're very professional.